What is going down? We got the spicy squad in the building. We got Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham, and we are going to talk about some of the leftover residuals from the Vikings. We're going to look at the Texans game tomorrow, but we're also going to talk roster predictions, breakdowns, who's going to make it, who's not, who's been balling, who needs to step it up. We're going to get into all of that right now, but let's get this thing. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Love to see it.
Woo! That be hype. Let's go. What is that? That's how we popping out now with the new intro?
Hey, and we got the new intro. You know we're official now. I know Jason's been asking me. He's like, come on, man. You got to get this intro up and going. I was like, all right, we got to get it done. But yeah, we got the new intro. But how are you doing, Jason, man? How are you doing today?
I'm great. We are officially done with completion percentage training camp reports, Brad. And I can't imagine a better time than only week one. That's the only time that would exceed right now. But I don't have to see people throwing out numbers without context to get engagement because you're thirsty for engagement without giving the proper context. I'm tired of it, man. It's done. It's all done at this point. So I don't want to hear about it anymore. None of that matters anymore. We got one more preseason game, and the completion percentage should start week one. That's when you should care.
Absolutely. And you already know the vibes. Drop a spicy sourdough in the chat. If you agree with Jason, if you are excited that the time of training camp stats are pretty much over with, we don't got to go back and forth, right? Because when you and I go to training camp, we want to see the nuance. We're looking for the context. We're looking to read in between the lines of why things are going down. And considering that training camp, joint practices, and preseason is coming to an end, how would you kind of characterize what you saw from training camp and all the off season as we are now kind of looking at the Texans? We're going to get the starters, but right after that, it's week one against Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears. How would you summarize the offseason?
Our prince Justin Fields. This is an awkward time, man. Whenever they play the Bears, but I feel good. I feel really good because the things that I saw going forward, and it doesn't have anything to do with completions from Trey, leads me to believe that everything's going to trend in the right direction. One thing that's always going to keep me good is, he's got a pretty good coach coaching him, like we should be fine, in that way. He's always going to put him in good spots. And the defense has been all we've ever talked about. And Eric Armstead has not taken one snap yet. I mean, that should let you know right off the bat how good this defense is. And they should be getting their starters back. Emmanuel Mosley is already back. Sounds like Charvarius Ward's on his way back. Maybe we don't get Jimmy Ward week one. I'm not going to act like that's oh, he's not going to be there. Who cares? It's not like that. But at the same time, everything feels good at this point. I feel great. The only thing that I would ask out of this game is get some reps for the starters and make sure everybody gets healthy to week one. That's it.
How do you feel about Trey Lance up until this point? What are you looking for Trey Lance heading into the Texans game as well?
Well, right now, I just want to see continuity with the offensive line. I just want to see them put together 2 good drives. And again, all this stuff, preseason training camp, none of that matters. Now, if you were a Mac Jones fan, and I'm asking this, and now I'm going to get spicy. If you're a Mac Jones fan, are you completely panicked because the offense has been in complete disarray during training camp? Oh, wait, it's Matt Patricia's fault, and it's Joe Judge's fault. It's always everybody else's fault. Are you completely scared at this point? Because I would make the argument that Mac Jones has shown me less during this training camp, during his preseason, than Trey Lance has. I think what I'm trying to say is it's meaningless what's going on now at this point. Like, it doesn't count, kind of matters, but you can't run off of everything that's going on right now. So at this point, just leave it alone, man. Just get to the games. Let's get to it. And I'm not necessarily as worried about Trey Lance going forward. He has all these things going for him. Elijah Mitchell's going to be there. We'll know the offensive line. The defense is never going to get behind 21, 28, nothing, forcing Trey Lance to throw the ball over and over. He's in the best spot. He's going to be fine.
I'm a big believer that the real preseason starts week 1 through 4 for the starters. And like that's when teams are really trying to figure it out because we've seen on multiple occasions teams come out. I think the Falcons were one of the recent teams. I think they started 5-0 and they lost like 8 games in a row after that. And then you can look at the San Francisco 49ers last year who had that 4-game losing streak and then started to get things going and getting into shape and moving the ball and doing all the things that you wanted to do. So I think overall, when we look at Trey Lance, I see progression. I see him continuing to work through the things that we've all talked about at length, and we don't need to rehash those. We know what it is. It's just being more consistent and being able to hit those throws that you know he can make with consistency. And that's really what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, and again, the same thing that I'll explain to, for the 800th time, because I feel like this is what we've been saying. If I told you in a drive that Trey Lance went 2 for 6 with no context, you'd say, wow, that's not good. That's under 50%. Yeah, but one of those is a 60-yard pass that puts them on the 5, and then it's a 5-yard touchdown pass. But 4 of those were either just a little bit high or a guy dropped the pass or, there was a PBU. I don't care. 2 for 6 doesn't matter. Score the damn touchdowns. There's completion percentage kings that can't score touchdowns, and there's guys who are 50 to 60% that score touchdowns and make impact plays. Like completion percentage is probably the most useless way to describe a quarterback's play. That's what I'm going to stand on.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing to stand on. Um, I don't know, Jason. This might be the last time we talk about this because roster cuts will be next Wednesday. We typically do State of the Franchise on Wednesdays. Is Jimmy Garoppolo going to be on the roster past next Wednesday? It's going to be the last time I think we talk about this. So I wanted to get it in early and see what your thoughts are for the 4 millionth time.
So here's the thing. August 30th is cut down day, right? But there is a way that Jimmy Garoppolo could still be on the 53 and not have his contract toll. And that is all the way up to September 10th, is what I've been told, like right the day before. But I would ask you this, Brad, and this is why I think it's one of the most stupid things to even say. Would you keep a man on the 53 roster and possibly risk losing someone else on the 53 to someone else just to keep him all the way up to September 10th and then cut him so you save that money? If it's August 30th and you're there and it comes down to bringing in a rotational D lineman or someone who would help in the secondary or an offensive lineman, cut the damn guy August 30th and let him move on. There's a small part of me that feels bad for Jimmy Garoppolo in a way. He deserves to continue his career. No matter how you feel about him, it doesn't matter what he's done here. That's fine. I'm not going to tell you how to feel about him. But he does deserve to move on already. He's being held hostage. Fans are being held hostage at this point. Just cut the damn cord, let the guy move on with his career, and let him go. If the 49ers were at a point where they said we need to move on from Joe Montana and they did so, then what are you waiting for with Jimmy Garoppolo? This seems like almost like a pride thing at this point, and it almost feels like the 49ers are doing exactly what they said. And John Lynch is continuing to stand on this in KMBR and saying, we don't just get rid of good players. It's not that Jimmy's not good. It's about your roster construction at this point and what makes sense for the team. He's not going to be here. He shouldn't want to be here. I wouldn't want to be here after you've been actively trying to get rid of me for year after year. I don't want to be here. I'm not a part of this team anymore. You don't have a playbook. You're not in any meetings. You're literally like a ghost on this roster. Like you're there, but you're not there. Let the man move on already. Let him move on with his career. Let him go at this point. Like I feel bad for him. He should be able to go somewhere else and continue his career because Jimmy Garoppolo is still a starting quarterback in this league, and I will stand on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult situation, and we've been detailing it from the jump, dating back to the combine when we thought Jimmy was actually going to get traded before the surgery occurred. So it's obviously going to be a continually ongoing situation, but I do believe that it would be best for just both parties, right? To when the roster cut down day comes, no trades materialize. Okay, wash your hands. thank you, Jimmy. We can give him his last goodbyes and thank yous for in reality bringing winning back to the franchise, because for what is said about Jimmy, we can talk about that he does win, and you could talk about how he wins and why he wins, but ultimately you'll never forget those 5 magical games that Jimmy had when he came in and went on that run, and the Super Bowl runs and things like that obviously didn't lead to the ultimate goal that we were looking for, but he still did his part. I think it would make the most sense for them to just cut ties and move on, let Jimmy find his next spot, and fully transition to Trey Lance as the quarterback.
This will piss me off too. Like, if Jordan Mason doesn't make this roster and they're holding on to Jimmy Garoppolo for the last moment, that's going to piss me off. Again, you are going to let a player who can potentially impact your team to either prove a point or be bullheaded. At this point, let the guy go August 30th and keep your best 53. If he's not going to be a part of the 53, what are you messing around with it for? What is the difference between 10 days and the way things have been going? The Cleveland Browns aren't beating your door down. Oh, I want to take a victory lap on that, by the way. I tried to tell all of you that Jimmy Garoppolo was never going to be a Brown. And it has nothing to do with that Jimmy Garoppolo not being better than Jacoby Brissett. It's their plan. It was literally their plan. But, the Browns, they'll never – no. Nobody wants Jimmy at this point. And there's been rumors now, insiders are saying that they know he's going to be in Seattle. Cut him, let him go. Who cares? End the conversation. I'm tired of talking about it. I am seriously tired of talking about it. The 49ers don't owe him anything, but just get rid of him on August 30th. That's it. 6 days, done. Why would you hold on to that number? Why would you cut a player who can actually potentially help this team? And why would you even do this to the guy who doesn't want to be here and shouldn't want to be here? None of this is making sense at any point. Cut him, man. Get rid of him. And he can't pass on. No, he can't be put on PUP because he passed his physical. There's nothing wrong with him right now at this point. Right. There's nothing wrong with him now. He's fine. Just get rid of him, man. It's annoying already. I'm tired of talking about it.
I think you made the point that his guaranteed money doesn't kick in until like the actual week 1, right?
Yes.
So there is potentially like a little bit of a gray area after roster cutdown day. But I think if we look at this roster and you're pointing to it, you're looking at the Jason Poes, the Jordan Masons, potentially Quantrez Knight. There are undrafted free agents that are proving that they're deserving of a roster spot. And maybe in 2017, 2018, based on the roster construction, you could keep Jimmy until right up against week 1. But it feels like if you were to keep Jimmy, like you are sacrificing the potential of another player that could be on this roster that will likely find himself on another roster. So I hear what you're saying. It feels like you can't sacrifice. And let's talk about Jordan Mason and what you think about him based on what you saw in training camp in preseason. He feels like he's got to make the roster, right?
He has to. I mean, this is not even a statement that's crazy. Jordan Mason has been the most consistent running back entire camp, entire preseason, not excluding anyone. Not Elijah Mitchell, not Trey Sermon, not Jeff Wilson, not TDP. Jordan Mason. If he got 3 reps in one practice, all 3 reps he popped. If he got 12 reps in a practice, all 12 reps he popped. I don't want to hear about him going against 4 stringers, because then any of you people that want Brock Purdy on this roster, I'm going to need to pull all that back, because you can't have it both ways. Jordan Mason has continued every single time that his number's been called, whether it's pass blocking, running, catching the ball. He's been the best running back with my own 2 eyes. I'm not speculating. I'm not making this up. I was at almost every single training camp, and when you watch him in preseason, all of that is translated. Jordan Mason has been the best running back on this roster, and now you've got a decision to make. For me, JaMycal Hasty is probably the best pass catching back on here, but give me the guy who gives you all 3 downs. I'd rather keep Jordan Mason than JaMycal Hasty.
I think we saw Jordan Mason as running back 1 upside. Like, it might not be this year, but you can foresee maybe in the next year or 2, if Jordan Mason gets more run in the offense, especially with the Kyle Shanahan scheme, he is built 5'11", 225 pounds. He has vision. He has cuts. He has bursts. He has all those different things. He can lower his shoulder. And some of the things that we've seen at training camp is he can catch out of the backfield. We haven't really even seen that in preseason yet. So there's still another layer to his game that it feels like they're waiting to showcase, if that. But it already seems like through take it for what it's worth. PFF has him graded as the number 1 running back in the
Oh,
NFL.
that fits my narrative.
Fits my narrative as well, so we'll throw it in there. He is just from the eye test, and if you're having to compare him to Trey Sermon, 3rd round pick, they traded up to go get Trey. You see this decisive running ability that Jordan Mason has, where it just feels like Trey just doesn't have that, I'm going to make a decision, I'm going to get upfield north-south. It just feels like there's this, I don't know what it is, but it feels like Jordan Mason has this decisive nature to his running style, and I haven't seen that from Trey Sermon. Do you think Trey Sermon is potentially vulnerable for making the roster? Do you think he's got another chance at it?
I think that we shouldn't point to draft capital as a reason to keep people, because when you know, and I think the smart man is the one who mitigates his costs and immediately gets rid of it. It's like sunken cost fallacy, right?
Yeah, I've heard of that as well.
I invested this 3rd round pick, I can't get rid of him. But if you know, it doesn't matter where you pick him. And I think that Elijah Mitchell last year kind of shows that goes out the window at certain points. Do I think that he's in trouble? I think that there's discussions being had, but I don't think they're going to cut him. If you want my opinion, I don't think they're going to cut Trey Sermon. Call it what it is. I don't agree with the thought process, but I think that what they invested, literally what they would be telling you as fans is, yeah, we invested in a 3rd round pick. We gave him 1 year and we cut him, but you drafted a punter in the 4th. And it's like,
it somehow came back to the punter in the 4th.
It's my God, man. Like, 3rd round pick is not like a 5th round pick. That's just a throwaway. A 3rd round pick is very valuable. So
yeah, you get starters in the 3rd round.
Right. Does the 49ers front office tell you, yeah, we made a mistake, or do they continue to be bullheaded? I'll state my opinion right now, and I reserve the right to change this as we watch this last game tomorrow. I don't think they're going to cut him. Man. And I think that a lot of that has to do with them thinking that they can get more out of him. And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but I'm just trying to put in their boat.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to cut Trey Sermon either. I just think Jordan Mason has made that conversation an actual conversation, if you will, because we look at Jordan Mason and what he's been able to do. Again, we talked about him all training camp. He's been one of the guys who's been consistently performing at a high level, regardless of which group he's running out there with, right? So, and with Trey Sermon, it just feels like I haven't seen too many breakaway plays from Trey Sermon throughout training camp, joint practices, preseason. And it feels like a lot of what we saw last year. So maybe in a normal circumstance, when they don't have 6 running backs, of course, Trey Sermon's making the roster, and they're going to give him another opportunity to prove his case. But I do think Jordan Mason, JaMychal Hasty, Jeff Wilson, TDP, they have made this a very difficult conversation, because are they going to keep 5 running backs? Are they going to keep 4 like they have historically, not including Kyle Juszczyk? What does it come down to? And then who else is not getting cut? Are you not keeping an extra lineman? Are you not keeping Brock Purdy? A lot of people like Brock Purdy. We'll talk about Brock Purdy in a little bit. But what does that mean for the roster construction? I agree with you. I don't know if Trey Sermon's going to get cut or not. That's again, as players say, it's above my pay grade. I don't want to be making that decision, because that's a really tough decision to make. But I will say the other tough decision on the flip side, if you let Jordan Mason hit that waiver wire,
he's gone.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.
And
we'll see you up north with Mr. Pistol Pete with his monocle on, just chewing his gum, just coming down to pick up Jordan Mason from the airport. It's not going to bode well either. It's a tough decision, right?
Jordan Mason's going to play on an NFL roster. I just hope it's the 49ers
100%.
roster. And for people mentioning Joe Williams, I've seen it a few times. Joe Williams was injured, completely injured. There was nothing he could do to play anymore. At least these guys can play. That's why they'll never cut them, right? That's completely different. When it comes to Joe Williams or, Jalen Hurd, push came to shove, where these guys were just completely broken down and couldn't play anymore. It wasn't like they were you know what, they don't have it. That's the part that makes me a little bit worried with Trey Sermon.
Gammon Brown says
There you
couldn't
go.
Shanahan couldn't let go of Pettis or Hurd. Well, he technically let go of both. I think he kept
He
Hurd a
let,
little bit
but it took
longer.
too long. Like he
It did take
literally
a
got
while.
rid of he literally got rid of Pettis when Pettis just like jumped out on his shield like in that Seattle game. It was like I regret nothing, and like just jumped out there and he just got and when he got rushed, like they were just like, all right, get him out of here. Yeah, like
Yeah. I'm nobody. You need to know. Great
you
name.
are. Stop it. Don't say that.
Sermon was so bad last game. He couldn't catch, couldn't block, and couldn't run through a lane to save his life. Kept ignoring lanes entirely. What are your thoughts on that?
All right, look, I think both things can be true. There was no room to run, and Trey Sermon was a little indecisive. There was a cutback lane on, I think it was the first run that I saw, that if he puts his foot in the ground and he cuts right back, there it is. I saw that one. As far as catching the ball, he did that all in one-on-ones. He would literally run a great rep against, Fred Warner and drop the ball. Like, so that's continued. But other than that one rep, because I watched it on all 22, I wanted to make sure I wasn't tripping. Everything flowed to the right side and there was a cutback lane. Like literally, if he just like looks left and just puts his foot in the ground and goes that way, he goes. Other than that, there was not really many places for him to run, but he was still indecisive. So yeah, I mean, and that's the worst part, the second part, the blocking part. I want to point to Malik Turner real quick. Malik Turner is going to make this roster, right? And he had a pretty egregious penalty where he swung at a player and
I saw that back on the 22. I didn't even
right.
see that in the broadcast.
Kyle Shanahan's pissed. But what did Malik Turner do? Did he put his head down? Nah, he forced a fumble on special teams. So if your game isn't clicking in one way, contribute in another way. And I think that's probably the biggest problem that I have with Trey Sermon right now. If you're not running well, catch the ball. If you're not catching the ball, block. You can't be not good at all three things at this point. And that's going to be an issue. So I agree with that in that respect. I saw really one cutback that he could have had. Other than that, there wasn't many places to run, but he still was just indecisive, man. That's it.
I agree with you. I think, Sermon was also aided by not getting great blocks in front of him. There was one particular play where Aaron Banks took the wrong angle off the line of scrimmage and then put him out of position to get to the second level, and the linebacker literally ran right by him and tackled Sermon. I don't put that on Sermon. I put that on Banks but just taking the wrong angle to get to the second level. But there was a little bit of everything, and I think part of my evaluation of Trey Sermon isn't just the Vikings game. It's all of training camp. It's last year. It's the entire scope. And I'm not seeing that jump because if you go back to week 3 where he got all the carries against Green Bay Packers, we talked about the same things. Like, yeah, he put up good production, but he left a lot of yards on the field by not seeing a cutback lane, by not hitting the hole at the right time. You're still kind of getting that a little bit, and I think that is just the most concerning at this point. And you look down and you see Jordan Mason, and he is arguably one of the most decisive runners right now on the team.
That's the issue.
He knows where he's going.
Right. You see Mason and you see TDP. They see a guy in front of them. They don't try to tiptoe it outside. They're like, all right, bet, lower the shoulder. Let's get violent. That's what I'm not seeing from Sermon at this point. And that's the thing. It's like you're kind of tiptoeing around a little bit. And you have to know, and TDP is figuring this out because he did the same thing. Like, you cannot bounce things to the outside. It don't matter. Second stringers, third stringers. This is the NFL. Those guys are going to close that off real fast. You have to get those tough yards. That's what we thought we were getting with Trey Sermon. That's what we think we're getting with TDP. And that's what Jordan Mason is doing, like, consistently every single time. I mean, it's no coincidence that he has 6 yards of carry. Like, that's the stuff, man. It's just like,
yards
what
after
did we
contact too?
Right. What did we draft you for? Right? Like, we drafted you to be an inside zone guy. Now it's all there for you. They literally ran it with TDP and Jordan Mason. Look at them flourishing. Look at you not being able to get it done.
What do you think about Coach's comments here? He says, do you guys see any Mason reps during camp with the ones? That's really my only hiccup with him. He wants to see him with the ones. Good on good. What are your thoughts on that?
When he went up against your starting linebackers, he whipped them in routes. I'm not worried about that in any way. He didn't get many reps with the ones, but if the holes that are there for TDP and that are there for Elijah Mitchell most of the time and Jordan Mason gets those, then I'm not worried because there's plenty of times where Elijah Mitchell had a great year. I don't want to downplay it. But when you go back and you look at his season, you could drive trucks through some of those holes, man. And you could drive trucks through some of those cutback lanes. And I think Jordan Mason would be just fine if you just gave him those same exact opportunities. So I think that those will still be there. There's no way that this offensive line, while it may not be as good as last year in terms of what I don't see it being any different in terms of that. They're still going to be able to run the ball. They're going to run the ball more. So if they're going to run the ball more, you might want to have more effective guys. So I'm not necessarily as worried about that. I think Mason, if he gets what Mitchell got last year, he'll be fine. He'll be fine.
I'm in the camp that if you put Mason with the one, he's gonna be even better. He's gonna have better blocking in front of him. You can definitely make the argument that the third string offensive line is not comparable to the 49ers third string defensive line. You have some starters on that third string defensive line that would be on other teams. Like you got Omenihu playing on the third string at times, Kamoko Ture, you have Jordan Willis. We know what he was able to do last year with that really magical play in Green Bay. But I really do look at the kind of the build of the 49ers third string offensive line compared to the third string defensive line. And I would say the defense actually has the upper hand, but you were still able to see Jordan Mason find lanes and punch through them. And I think that will translate regardless to any line that you're with or any potential skill players on the opposite side. I think Mason has proven he's decisive. He will stick his foot in the ground and he will get east, west, and north, south just as quickly. And I think that's one of his best traits. He sees it, he feels it, and he makes the read and cut. And you can see him slithering through in between these offensive linemen. He works really good through the trash. Like he's really good at that. And I think that's where we're kind of seeing, Trey Sermon will come up into the wash and there's really nothing there. And he just kind of runs into the back of someone where you can at least see Mason will find that little sliver that will allow him to gain an extra 2-3 yards. So I think if you were to take him and put him with the ones, he would actually be even better than what we've seen up until this point. Brian says, heard a rumor we might package Banks and Sermon in a trade. Scale of 1 to 10. Do you think this happens? And what do we get? What's your scale on this one?
0. And also, nobody's gonna trade for Trey Sermon, man. I'm sorry. Just like everybody's like, oh, just trade him. Yeah, well, you need a team to accept. What team's gonna sit there and give you draft capital for Trey Sermon when they don't even want, and then nobody wants to give you capital for a quarterback, which is much more valuable. Like, there's no trade value for any of these running backs, my friends. I'm sorry. Like, no one is going to do that. No one trades for running backs at this point, especially when you're finding running backs off the undrafted free agent. If you think that we're down on Trey Sermon, think about the league that has the film on him as well, and those front offices and those scouts that are saying, yeah, you know what? We don't want him either because he's not cooking at all. Like, you're not going to trade for running backs, and getting rid of Aaron Banks before he plays one game is wild. The sweetener to this deal is not Trey Sermon. It would be Aaron Banks. It would be, please trade Trey Sermon, and here, we'll throw you Aaron Banks. Like, it's not the other way around. Like, it's not going to happen. No.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I haven't heard this, but I would agree that it would be really low on the scale. You don't want to trade Aaron Banks right now before he's even got a start in the NFL. You got to see what he is first. So I think that's really how it goes. Let me see. We got a couple more running back questions. The running back room is seemingly heating up to be one of the biggest talking points around the 49ers right now.
I think everything else is pretty much set at this point. There's only one room that really feels like it's undecided. Everything else is set. You got your linebackers, you got your secondary, you got your linemen pretty much at this point. You got your D-line. Quarterbacks, I guess, is the only other thing. Wide receivers are set. Running back is the only thing that's not set. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. Let's wrap up our running back conversation with Gammon Brown. Says most disappointing aspect with Sermon is that he had a whole year in the system. Mason and TDP are still learning the playbook, blocking assignments. What's your overall takeaway on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't want to look too far into something, but when I was out there at camp, I was talking to KP, and he was there for a media day where he spoke with Anthony Lynn. And Anthony Lynn literally listed every single running back and what they do well and what's going on with them, and literally didn't mention Trey Sermon. Now, is that something? Maybe. Is it nothing? Maybe. But how do you forget the guy that's like a third round guy and a guy that we all thought would flourish with Anthony Lynn being there? He literally talked about every single running back but him. Is that how they're feeling? I don't know. But I found it interesting when KP told me that he literally talked at length about everyone else and literally did not say anything about Trey Sermon. Not one thing.
And guess who is a Jordan Mason guy?
He
Anthony
is.
Lynn.
Yes, he
That's
is.
him. That is him.
Yes, he is.
That is him.
He is
So
him.
he is him. So we'll see how it continues to play out. As you can see, Jason and I big on the Mason hype train. So we'll see how it ultimately plays out. Again, above both our pay grades to make those decisions. We can speculate as much as we want. But it's fascinating to see how it plays out.
That's just funny to me, Brad, as I see the comments. Dude, you're not in the front office. Well, then why are you here? Why do you want to hear us talk about it? Like, you can just like leave if you don't like what we have to say. People are just asking.
We're clearly not in the front office.
Yeah, people are just asking our opinions, and then people get mad. Well, you're not in the front office. Well, thank you for pointing out the obvious. Nice job, genius. Sorry.
We're just like every one of you. We want to talk about it.
We're talking about it. What the hell?
It's a fun thing to talk about.
You don't gotta watch. I promise you don't gotta watch.
Let's talk about another riser. The theme feels like undrafted free agents rising up. I mean, we knew heading in to OTAs and minicamp after the draft, and we're looking at the draft class as like a big hit, like so far. Like you're looking at starters out of Spencer Burford, Samuel Womack, Danny Gray looks like he's going to be a guy. TDP looks like he's going to be a guy. Drake Jackson looks like a guy. Hell, you got Brock Purdy stands out there already. But the undrafted free agents like Jason Poe, again, the ultimate underdog. Matt Barrows said yesterday that he was taking reps next to Trent Williams. Well, we know what that means. When you start to see a rotation happening, that means they're playing with the idea at least that Poe could play with the starters. I don't know, but what do you think of Poe so far and his rise to stardom almost?
I love the Will Ferrell impression. I'm Ron Burgundy. That was perfect. No, I think Poe makes his team at this point. And here's something that I want to throw back at you, offensive line guru. Mike McGlinchey, may or may not be on this team next year. He's in a contract year. Let's see what happens, right? But what about the idea of, shout out to Gambit Mod Squad in the building.
Do what he says.
Yes, please. What about Burford moving to right tackle and Jason Poe at right guard next year, down the line? And I think that he's shown a little bit too much to let go at this point. I initially had it that he was going to make the practice squad. If you throw Jason Poe on the practice squad, he's gone unless you put him in one of those like protected spots. So
there's too much hype about him now.
Oh yeah.
And the tape's out there, and he's demolishing 6'5" defensive ends that were 4-star, 5-star prospects that coming out of Florida State. Like he's this kid out of Mercer. Trent Williams joked about, is he even 6'1"? Are you guys sure he's 6'1"? That might be 6'1" on the roster. You've seen it all the time. Going back to my time playing, they'll have a guy who's like 5'11", but they'll give him 2 extra inches on the roster sheet just to make it look a little bit more appeasing. But it does feel like Poe's maybe a little bit about 6 foot, maybe even a little more vertically challenged. But it does feel like at this point he might be heading towards a roster lock. I don't know if you can cut the guy. I don't know if you can.
Did you see when Trent was asked about that? He was like, he's 6'1". Like he was like, what, sure, man? No, I mean I feel he's done enough, and when he's been asked to perform, he did well. I believe in the preseason game as well too. Pulled into a place and gave out a pancake. I think he is versatile. He can play guard. He can play center. He can play both spots. So yeah, I think that versatility is going to keep him on his roster. It's going to be hard to keep him off it. So yeah, man, give me all the Jason Poe talk, man. I'm with it at this point. The one thing that I'm going to ask is, where does this leave Donovan West at this point, right? Like, because where was he in this entire game, right? Like, did he even get reps? Like, I don't remember seeing him out there. And I could have sworn with the undrafted free agent contract they gave him that he would have been the lock for 53. Kind of just funny how things work out when you just continue to, look
Let the
through. Like,
guys play.
right. So
He
interesting.
feels like a practice squad guy. I'm not a
He'll
big
sneak by on
fan.
practice squad.
I'm not a big fan of Sutherland. And
I don't know how he makes this roster.
I feel like, yeah, he's definitely not. We'll see if he'll be a practice squad guy. They seem to like him inside, but I think Donovan West will be a practice squad guy. I think Donovan West will definitely benefit from getting a year within the system. One, to not only learn it better, but I think transform his body a little bit. I was one of the things that I noticed that when we were at the combine and I got to see him up close and personal. Was like, okay, well, maybe this is why he's not as highly regarded, because the tape was good, but we talk about body beautiful and all that. You're like, he looks kind of small. He's definitely looked a little smaller than everyone else. But you got guys like Poe, and that's not a problem at all. To your point earlier that you made about McGlinchey. McGlinchey is obviously dealing with the knee irritation, and we'll see how that goes. I think you might have remembered at camp I pointed out, I was like, look at McGlinchey right now. He's messing with his knee, and then he pulled himself out right after that, and then we haven't seen him since. So if we I'm not ready to look towards next year. Obviously, there's going to be a decision needs to be made of bringing McGlinchey back or not. I always looked at the Burford draft pick as like, oh, that looks like the McGlinchey replacement. Like, just like you saw the 49ers draft Aaron Banks when you had Laken Tomlinson on the roster. Even how good Laken Tomlinson played, they just were like, we're not going to be able to pay Laken what he's going to be able to get on the open market. So we're going to look a year ahead and draft his replacement. Kind of feels like the same philosophy on the opposite side with McGlinchey, but if Poe's turning out and he could play guard and you have Burford and he could kick Burford out to right tackle, it's definitely a range of outcome that could absolutely go down. So we'll see what happens. Coach says, quick point to you guys. Shout out Coach for the 20 piece. Shout out to everyone who's sending the super chats today. Appreciate you guys. He says, we're not the only guys releasing players. True. Great point.
Very good.
The market is always going to shake things up. True. Remember, we shop different. One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Yep.
We always seem to grab those types of guys.
Yep.
Good point.
Especially on the defensive line. I mean, they just go ahead and they bet on traits, with Kasarik. That's why, I'd be shocked if like they cut like a Jordan Willis or a Kerry Hyder to keep a third quarterback in any way. Like, that'd be shocking for me. Like, I would be shocked at that because of the way this team is built and the way that they want to build. But yeah, I think Coach brings up a really good point. That's why people are like, oh, cut that Dante Johnson. You can always sign him back. Yeah, there's a lot of 49ers coaches out there right now at this point. If you cut Dante Johnson, I don't think he's coming back. Like, you can't just keep falling back on those sort of things. So there's going to be some very good football players that don't make this 53 roster. And it's not because they're not good at football. It's because it's simply a number game and they will land on their feet and go somewhere else. And I think that should give 49er fans confidence. Your team is that loaded that people are waiting. Seattle Seahawks is sitting around a tree waiting for guys to get cut. Other teams are waiting for the cuts so they can go ahead and grab guys up because they would safely be on other teams' 53. They just may not have a spot here because of how loaded this roster is.
Would you say that this is the most anticipated 53-man roster cut down deadline since Kyle Shanahan has taken over?
Yes. No questions asked at this point. 2019's defensive line, you cannot duplicate the heights of Armstead, Buckner, Bosa, and D Ford. But I would argue this defensive line is more loaded now than it was then in terms of depth. And the way that this team won at the end of last year was with fresh legs. And now you're talking about a cornerback one in Ward, another cornerback one in Mosley. He showed what he was doing last year. And this linebacker room is the best in the league. And, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but we're going to see how they perform. And then we can have the discussion of like, Willis Bowman Brooks. Like, do you get into that discussion, like later on? But yeah, I mean, I think it's very easy to see that this is the most loaded roster they've had.
What do you think about the draft class so far? I talked about it a little bit earlier, but what have you seen through the offseason and preseason up until this point with the 49ers draft class?
It's a shift in the way that Kyle does things from I need a veteran at everything to Womack's going to be the first one off for nickel corner. Burford is going to start. Danny Gray looks like he has a role on this team. TDP looks like he's going to get some significant run. I think that good coaches change with new information. They don't stay rigid. That's how you adapt in this league. And think about draft classes. How many of those guys were instant contributors? And I think this is the first time that you're going to see many draft. And Drake Jackson's going to be part of this rotation. Like, many of these guys are going to have important roles from day one. Now, that shows two things to me. Kyle Shanahan is moving in a different direction with the way that he brings people through. And they've hit on many of these guys, and they're getting value out of all of them. So, yeah, I mean, the draft class, while in the beginning, I understand that people weren't exactly like through the roof because there weren't as many big names. But when you look at how they contributed and you look at their backgrounds, this could be their best draft class. And there was a draft class where they had Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel in that same draft class. This could be their best draft class if all things pan out.
Was Mitch Wishnowsky in that 2019 draft class?
I don't care. Yes, I don't know, maybe whatever, man.
So that is 2019 right now is the gold standard. That's the gold bar. You got Bosa, you got Debo, and you got Mitch Wish, man. Whoo! Let's go. You love to see it.
And you could have had Terry McLaurin. Sorry. All right, that's the last time I'm bringing it up. I promise.
Oh man, that was a special wide receiver class.
What?
100%. They could have had a lot of guys, and at least they got one of them. Right? We got Debo.
No, but like DK, Debo, Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin. My goodness, man! Like we're gonna look back. AJ Brown. We're gonna look back at that class and say
Hollywood Brown too, right?
Yeah. I mean, the only class that I would put up there against them is the 2000 class of. I mean, the 2020 class, right? Or was it
the one that came right after?
Yeah, right after. Like Justin Jefferson,
Henry Ruggs
CD
made
Lamb.
that a little oof.
But you know. Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Aiyuk. We're gonna have a discussion. This is gonna be a beautiful discussion to have, and I love wide receivers, so I'm gonna have it for years to come.
Absolutely, the wide receivers have been through the roof. Speaking of wide receivers, what do you think about Brandon Aiyuk's comments? Do you even care about what Brandon Aiyuk said about joint practices?
That is the sign of a guy who is like completely locked into his role as a leader right now. That right there, and look, and Joe brings up a good point. T. Higgins also. Like, how could I forget T? Like, my goodness.
He's dope.
But Brandon Aiyuk, that for me is like, I'm the guy, I can say whatever I want. I'm comfortable at the press conference, and I can do whatever I want. So for me, that's just another vote of confidence for a guy that I have pegged to lead this team in all receiving categories. I will continue to say it. My narrative, my hot take was before training camp started. Training camp only furthered that narrative for me. Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a guy who knows that he's the guy. He's confident, playing the best football of his life, and he knows that a big season's coming, man. So let's go.
Absolutely. So let's kind of transition into tomorrow's game. You have the Texans or the 49ers going to the Texans. Based on everything we've heard from Kyle Shanahan, he's going to be rolling out the starters for what sounds like an entire half. What are you looking for? Let's start with the offense. What are you looking for from the starters on offense for this last preseason game?
3-4 series. Show me you can move the ball. You're going to be playing against their starters as well too. So for everybody that's like, well, Trey Lance is already against backups. Well, you know, but then here's what's here. I prediction. Trey Lance does well against the Texans starters. Well, it's the Texans. Who cares? Oh, okay. So
they still talk about that from last year.
Right. That's what I'm saying. You need to see starters. Okay, well, here's the Texans starters. Well, it's the Texans. Who cares? You know, like, it's just, come on, man. Like, you guys just let it play out. Again, preseason matters, but it doesn't count. So, just 3-4 series. Show some cohesiveness with this tight end, this offensive line group, and just get out of there healthy more than anything. That's it. Get out of there healthy. I don't think the defense has to play anything, any first teamers at all. If I had my way, I know what this defense is. I don't need them to be out there in any way. Who cares? The offense needs to be out there a little bit more, but just everybody get healthy. That's it. Just get healthy.
Do you think they play Nick Bosa?
They shouldn't. I want to see Nick Bosa sitting in bubble wrap on the sideline. Like they shouldn't at all. He doesn't need to do any. Nick Bosa doesn't need to do anything. Just show up in week 1 and dominate. Don't do anything. Don't even risk it. At least with the offense, I'll say this: 17 days in between this game and the first game. There is a such thing as being cold. There is a such thing about, not feeling pads. So I know less about the offense than I do the defense. I know what the defense is. I'm good. They can have 17 days off and pull up and they'll be fine. They'll be fine. Offense, I need you guys to kind of go through it. I don't want them sitting for 17 days.
I think that's fair. I think we look at the defense right now, the way it's constructed, and we're like, we don't need to see a single we don't need to see Fred. We don't need to see Bosa. We don't need to see Jimmy Ward. We don't need to see Charvarius. We don't need to see Emmanuel. We know what these guys are. We really don't need to see it. It's more of the offense, right? And specifically kind of that offensive line. Like, what is that going to look like? You got Colton McKivitz coming in at right tackle. Spencer Burford has seemed to answer a lot of questions. I don't think anyone really has any concerns about Spencer Burford, but you're still looking at Jake Brendel at center and Aaron Banks at left guard. Obviously, no questions with Trent Williams. What do you still kind of think about that center left guard tandem? Do you think that's still a work in progress?
I mean, it will be. Brendel and Banks is what I'm gonna roll with. That's the safe prediction at this point, unless something changes. And yeah, let's not lie. Bless you, baby. No, Avery's right there. She just sneezed. Week 1 is usually an extension of the preseason, regardless. And for whatever reason, Kyle Shanahan teams don't exactly come out firing in week 1, even those Falcons teams. Like, you can go back and check the numbers. Like last year, they scored a bunch of points, but you could still say they were flat. Look at how close that Lions game got. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a work in progress for a little bit. They're going to need those game reps, actual starters against them. So yeah, I'll say it's those two, but I still am not ready to make any judgments on that just yet until we get extended game reps against starters.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat. I feel like, I can understand why Jason Poe could be potentially getting some reps, but I think you also just got to see what you have with Aaron Banks in some real like game planning type situations before you start getting any crazier with potentially kind of shifting guys in. I think they just need to determine if Jason Poe is worthy of a roster spot or not. So the offensive line, I think for the majority of the year is going to continue to be a work in progress. I think Trent Williams said it best when he was asked about the entire offense as a whole. He said it's a work in progress. And I think with Trey Lance and kind of the unknowns from the offensive line, I think it's pretty easy to believe it will be a work in progress. So I think you're right. We're looking at the Texans game, and we're just hoping that walk out of there injury free. You see a little bit of steps in the right direction and moving forward. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot that could go wrong. Hopefully, knock on wood. And you're getting ready to go face the Prince over there in Chicago. So that's what it's coming down to.
What a weird time for us in week 1. We want the 49ers to win, but I so desperately want Justin Fields to succeed and play well during the season just so I can be validated with me wanting him so
with
badly.
how hard we went after.
Right. Yeah. Fields. It's this week 1 is not going to be easy. But yeah, we're getting close, man. And that's the best part too, is we got one more of these preseason games, then we've got 17 days, and then, let the argument start right after the preseason game about what happens with Jimmy Garoppolo. Cannot wait. Can't wait, man.
It's going to be wild. We're going to be arguing about, are the 49ers keeping 3 quarterbacks? Are they keeping 2 quarterbacks? Are they keeping 5 running backs or 4? And the list goes on and on. So obviously we're going to be watching for what happens against the Texans, but we're also going to be instantly talking about roster projections. What's the 53 man going to look like? We're going to see if we can gain or learn anything from the Texans game for some of these fringe guys that are battling. We talked a lot about the 6 wide receiver spot. Feels like Malik Turner's got that wrapped up, right? Doesn't feel like there's really
Malik Turner's making the roster.
There's not a ton of competition coming for that spot. Tashawn Gibson, is he going to push Tarvarius Moore for his spot? That was an interesting signing to me this late in the game. Is that do you see that as a response to Jimmy Ward still being out, or do you see that as a response to maybe they're not as high as on Tarvarius Moore?
Well, I think it's both. I think that you do need a certain amount of bodies to run practices. But I did think it was interesting that when we got back from the Minnesota game, George Odom took reps with the ones at safety, and then Dante Johnson did. And then all of a sudden, Tarvarius Moore's with the twos. So read into that as much as you want. Gibson, maybe he's just here to make sure that guys can practice. I think Willie Snead was one of those guys too, where you can use him and you have them around. I don't think they're
Get a
going to be
veteran
pushing.
in.
Right, they're not going to be pushing for a roster spot, anything like that. But I did think it was really interesting that you would have thought right off the bat that Tarvarius Moore would have been the first one off right after, but George Odom was, and he's actually improved a ton since we first saw him. So is Gibson here because of Ward? He's probably insurance break in case of glass. Or, you ready for this? I'm going to connect some dots here. My favorite narrative and the one that actually is tangible and the only one that you really should is revenge games. Deshaun Gibson has played for 2 different teams during his time, the Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears. Put on the damn tinfoil hat. I can't believe Kyle Shanahan would go through these lengths to have Deshaun Gibson play in 2 straight revenge games against teams. So that's the best way I could put it. But at this point, I think that it's a little bit more telling that Tarvarius Moore ran with the 2s as opposed to him being right out there with the 1s. And Odom, who in the beginning struggled a bit, we could admittedly, we saw him in camp and he struggled a bit, kind of picked it up a little bit. Who knows? Maybe he's found his way in this system. Maybe he'll be the guy with Jimmy Ward maybe not being there. But I think Deshaun Gibson is at least, at the worst, insurance.
Yeah, I agree. So a lot of things to watch for.
Oh, breaking case of glass. Break in case of emergency. Sorry, there you go, Chrissy. Cook my ass real quick.
It's definitely going to be something that we monitor because, back in Minnesota, Tarvarius Moore was struggling a little bit, and George Odom played a lot better. And that translated into the preseason game. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Again, they got all the tape. They got all the information. We're just speculating at this point. But, Jason, we made it. Last preseason game is tomorrow. Then we're talking about real football in front of us. We're going to be breaking down Chicago, their defense, the offensive line. How much will Justin Fields be running for his life? We'll be talking about all that good stuff. So,
Brad,
hey,
is this our
last time?
Is this our second year of doing State of the Franchise?
We're headed into year 2?
Yeah, so we started last year, had some bumps and bruises, and then the team righted the ship when we started doing State of the Franchise every Wednesday.
So, fittingly enough, we started State of the Franchise heading into week 8 against Chicago.
Aha! Wow. Full circle.
Full circle. It's really coming together. But shout out to everyone who's been rocking with State of the Franchise. You guys already know we be rocking on both channels at the same time. So you already know. Go sub to both. Make sure you're liking. Hit the noti bells on both channels and do all that good stuff. But again, shout out to all the Spicy Sourdough squad out there. Always making the chat lively. Chat was on point today. You guys did some good work today. So shout out to you guys. Grab your cookies on the way out. If you stayed from start to finish, we appreciate you guys as always. Jason, anything else you want to say on our way out?
Nah, shout out to everybody for joining and everything. Keep your eyes out for more underdog drafts. If you want to join Underdog Fantasy, we're doing over and unders. Make sure you use that promo code Aponte. Also, partnered up with Manscaped. So if you're looking to get yourself right for your loved one, 20% off of your first purchase. They'll give you the weed whacker, the
weed whacker,
the lawnmower, everything. You just use promo code Aponte for that as well too. But shout out to everybody, man. Hey, we got some stuff popping up. Things are going. And tomorrow we'll be on Get Playback, so you could watch during the game with us. Me, Akash, Rich, and Vish. And then make sure that you tapped in with Brad and everything that he's got going on too.
Yeah,
watch party tomorrow. Yes.
Check in with Jason.
Yes.
That thing was pretty dope that they were doing. So he'll have more information on that. Make sure you tap in with him.
Yep.
But again, Shout out to all the squad. We appreciate you always rocking with us. And we're getting ready for a fun season. It's going to be an eventful season. I can't say that we know exactly what's going to happen, but I think that's what makes it so interesting is
Oh
that
yeah.
there's a million different ways it could go. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. And we're getting to start this year, State of the Franchise, from week 1 on. So it's going to get spicy here, Jason. Just the way you like it.
Yeah.
So again, shout out to everyone for tapping in. Appreciate you guys. We're out of here. State of the Franchise. We'll be back next Wednesday, breaking down all the roster cuts and everything, and then of course previewing week 1 against the Bears. For now, that's Jason. I'm Brad.